Ahead of the general debate at the 76th session of the UNGA, India's Minister of External Affairs S Jaishankar is set to meet UK's newly appointed Foreign Minister Liz Truss. The ministers are expected to evaluate the strategic 2030 roadmap when they meet. The roadmap 2030 is a comprehensive strategic partnership between India and the UK, which involves a framework for the UK-India relationship over the next 10 years. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his UK counterpart, remember, had adopted the pact to strengthen ties earlier this year and work closely on areas like security, defence, technology, science, as well as climate. Under the pact, the UK will be supporting development of India's indigenous light combat aircraft Mark II. The Taliban's second coming will also be on top of the agenda at the meeting. Both the ministers are likely to draw out a strategy on the way forward as global terror threats make a comeback in Kabul. Both the ministers are also likely to discuss the issue of migration. London and New Delhi had earlier pledged to make it easier for Indian and British nationals to live and work in each other's countries. The COVID-19 pandemic and vaccines may also dominate the dialogue between the two foreign ministers. Both the countries had pledged to firm up international supply chains to ensure that medicines and vaccines reach those in dire need under the Roadmap 2020 earlier this year.
WION USA Direct from Washington, D.C. with Siddhant Sibal.
And for more on these developments, with us is our correspondent Siddhant Sibal, joining us from Washington, D.C. Where you are, Siddhant, has been one of the key platforms for what lies ahead when it comes to the discussions that will be taking place between the Indian Prime Minister and the U.S. President. Tell us more about what is expected, what is on agenda. A lot of expectations from that crucial meeting.
Well, yes, Molly, it has now been confirmed by White House. The bilateral will take place on 24th of September, that's Friday. And this is something of a big development in terms of the first in-person meeting between the two leaders. We know that already they have been engaging with each other, a number of telephonic conversations. They've been part of the summits, the Quad virtual meeting, the climate meeting. But when it comes to agenda, officially both sides are tight-lipped about the agenda. We do expect briefings nearer to the date of the bilateral. But it is but natural that the focus will be on climate change, on the COVID pandemic, on Afghan crisis. We know that when it comes to Afghanistan, India is concerned about security situation there, and that becoming a challenge for New Delhi in terms of safe havens for Pakistan-based international terror groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed. We know that Washington understands this point, especially when it comes to Pak-based international terrorists. And we know that just a few days ago, when the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken was at the panel, the Foreign Affairs panel, the congressional panel, he talked about Pakistan and how US, of course, is monitoring the development. But undoubtedly, climate change is another key aspect of this relationship. The US climate envoy John Kerry was in New Delhi just last week. That was his second visit. Shows how both countries are engaging. We know that India, as a developing country, has told the Western countries, the Western world, that it would need financing when it comes to the initiatives taken by the developing countries. But India has its own initiatives as well, something which has been lauded by the World International Solar Alliance. And also India has number of time talked about how it is fulfilling its Paris climate commitments, in fact exceeding them, one of the few G20 countries to do so. But all in all, this relationship, this partnership has evolved very much in last 2 decades. There was a famous phrase, that hesitation of history between United States and India. That, of course, has been officially dropped. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been coming to US many times since 2014. His last visit, in fact, was just in 2019 when he took part in the Houston event, the mega Indian diaspora event. And undoubtedly, the Indian diaspora plays a key role in terms of being the connect, the people-to-people linkages, the living bridge between the two countries. Millions of Indian Americans, Indian origin people. In fact, the Biden administration has the largest number of Indian Americans in the various positions, including, of course, the Vice President herself. But largely, this visit will help lay foundation for the betterment and strengthening of relationship, how both countries can work together in a concerted manner, especially when it comes to Indo-Pacific, something that both Washington and New Delhi back amidst, of course, an aggressive China which is aggressive with all the countries in the region. We have seen with India, the line of actual control incident, with US off and on, we have seen harsh comments by the Chinese side coming, and this entire bilateral coming on a day, in fact, when the first in-person Quad meeting will take place. That is an event that is expected to be a star-studded affair in terms of geopolitics. This was a grouping that emerged out of the 2004 tsunami, Indian Ocean tsunami, and since then there have been on and off developments, half-baked attempts on formalization, but this year it has formally been formalized. We saw the virtual meeting happening in which the COVID vaccine initiative was announced, and now, of course, the first in-person meeting in which a lot of key outcomes are expected.
Siddhant Sibal tracking all those developments in Washington, D.C. Thanks very much for joining us on the broadcast. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.